The U.S. military is currently executing a multi-phased air campaign over Iran. This is a systematic dismantling of a nation's entire defense network. To dismantle these defenses, American commanders are relying on a three-layered bomber strategy. They are peeling back the layers of the Iranian air defense system one step at a time. It starts with the B-2 Spirit. These stealth bombers fly directly into contested airspace to blind Iranian radar and take out key strategic nodes. Next comes the B-52 Stratofortress. These aircraft deliver sledgehammer strikes to shatter hardened military infrastructure across the country. Finally, we get to the B-1B Lancer. This bomber is tasked with the final, precise strikes against what remains of the Iranian military apparatus. This methodical progression blinds the enemy and breaks their shield, preparing the airspace for the final neutralization of all exposed targets. Getting those B-1 Lancers into position required serious logistics. The initial wave of bombers flew 30-hour round-trip sorties from the continental United States, relying entirely on mid-air refueling over the Atlantic and Mediterranean. These extreme flight durations were necessary because the UK initially refused to let American forces use key military bases, like RAF Fairford. That decision increased the operational risk for American pilots. Because of that risk, the U.S. opted for standoff munitions. A standoff munition is a weapon launched from a distance, allowing the attacking aircraft to evade enemy defensive fire. This turned the bombers into high-capacity launch platforms, safely out of range of anti-air systems. To see exactly what that looks like, look at this diagram comparing the payload capacity of the three B-1s sent into Iran. Together, they carried a maximum payload of 222,000 pounds of explosive force. Instead of dropping unguided gravity bombs, these B-1s fired guided weapons like the AGM-158 JASSM. The JASSM is a low-observable standoff cruise missile designed to strike targets from hundreds of miles away. The B-1s acted as flying snipers. They launched thousands of pounds of guided explosives to obliterate targets before the enemy even knew they were in danger. Let's shift our focus from the weapons to the targets themselves. These strikes occurred deep within the borders of Iran, within vast populated areas. The primary targets were Iran's Command and Control, or C2, centers. A C2 center is a centralized facility where military commanders plan and coordinate the actions of their ground, naval, and air forces. They act as the central nervous system of the military. When you lose those C2 centers, the military body is paralyzed. Without a functioning brain, the military is incapable of coordinating retaliatory strikes. The secondary targets were Iran's above-ground ballistic missile sites and launcher infrastructure. These represent the primary offensive threat to American allies in the region. This creates a cascading failure across the Iranian military. Even if isolated units want to fight back, their physical means of launching strikes have been turned into smoking craters. By simultaneously blinding the commanders and destroying the weapons, the U.S. disabled Iran's capacity to wage modern warfare. We can see the success of this systematic dismantling by looking at the statistical fallout from the first 48 hours of Operation Epic Fury. In just 2 days, over 1,250 targets were hit, rapidly eradicating 75% of Iran's missile launch capacity. Correspondingly, actual ballistic missile launches plummeted by 86%, and drone deployments dropped 73%, forcing them to rely on rapidly depleting isolated barrages. This campaign has secured the strategic objective, a transition from air superiority to absolute, uncontested air supremacy. Air supremacy is a condition where a military force has complete control of the airspace and faces no effective interference from the enemy. Former CIA Director General David Petraeus noted, "We're not concerned really at this point in time about the air and ballistic defense of Iran, as long as you stay above heavy machine gun range, and that means you can just really pour it on." This creates a new reality for the Iranian military. American bombers can now loiter with impunity, and with the UK opening its bases for rapid refueling, those B-1 Lancers can strike continuously. In the subterranean darkness of a shattered command bunker beneath Tehran, a lone Iranian officer stares silently at a wall of static-filled screens, the suffocating dread broken only by the low, unyielding rumble of American bombers circling endlessly in the skies above, waiting for the final order. The U.S. air campaign over Iran began with a targeted strategy: send in stealth bombers to neutralize the country's air defenses. With the skies cleared, the path is now open for a much heavier class of firepower. Looking at this animated map, you can see the massive logistical hurdle the U.S. initially faced. To deliver their payloads, B-1 bombers had to fly brutal 30-hour round trips from the continental U.S. to Iran and back, simply because the United Kingdom refused to allow American forces to use its forward operating bases. Zooming in on this map, we can pinpoint exactly what was off-limits: RAF Fairford in the UK and Diego Garcia, a highly strategic island base in the Indian Ocean. That political roadblock vanished after an Iranian attack drone hit a UK military base in Cyprus. The strike immediately forced London to drop its objections and take on a direct supporting role in the conflict. The immediate result is that the UK has opened its doors. U.S. B-1s are now actively landing at RAF Fairford, using the sprawling base to refuel, restock, and prep for rapid, repeated sorties into Iranian airspace. The bombers are also routing through that previously denied British territory in the Indian Ocean, utilizing Diego Garcia's vast fuel reserves to build a suffocating geographic advantage right on Iran's doorstep. This single shift in base access completely rewrites the American military posture. The U.S. no longer has to rely on isolated, exhausting long-range missions. They are now equipped for a sustained, inescapable bombing campaign that can hit Iran over and over again with extremely high frequency. The operation has moved entirely past surgical strikes into total aerial supremacy. Former CIA Director General David Petraeus confirmed that American aircraft can now operate with total impunity over Iran, provided they stay above heavy machine gun range. Operating freely in these cleared skies, the military is relying on the B-1 bomber as a high-capacity launch platform. These bombers are firing off thousands of pounds of standoff munitions, weapons designed to be launched from a safe distance, well outside the range of any lingering local defenses. This data visualization breaks down exactly what that expanded campaign looks like on the ground. The U.S. has hit roughly 3,000 military targets, including 43 warships. But notice this massive cluster here. Those are command and control, or C2 centers. A C2 center is the central hub where commanders gather to observe the battlefield and send orders to their troops. When we look at how this impacts offensive capabilities, the numbers are devastating. As the chart dynamically shifts, you can see Iran's original missile launch capacity compared to what they have left. The U.S. and Israel have successfully eradicated 75% of their launchers. By cutting off the C2 centers, the brain, and destroying 75% of the launch capacity, the muscle, the U.S. has mathematically eliminated the regime's ability to coordinate any kind of sustained defensive war. Despite losing the vast majority of their launch capacity, Iran is still firing weapons. Since the conflict began, they have managed to launch over 500 missiles and roughly 1,400 drones. But they aren't aiming at the U.S. naval fleet surrounding them. Instead, they are firing these weapons at neighboring Gulf states. Internally, this is a disastrous tactical choice. Iran is rapidly burning through its severely limited, irreplaceable stockpiles of munitions for absolutely zero military gain against the American forces currently dismantling their infrastructure. Diplomatic relations are faring even worse. By attacking the Gulf states, Iran is actively alienating the exact neighbors they would desperately need to step in and mediate an eventual ceasefire. This is the behavior of a completely cornered adversary. The regime is sabotaging its remaining military reserves and severing its only diplomatic lifelines in a futile display of regional bullying. At this stage, the U.S. is not offering any diplomatic exits. President Donald Trump has stated clearly that no deals or off-ramps will be provided until the Iranian regime offers an unconditional surrender. The operational threat backing up that demand is already in place. With those UK bases now fully accessible, U.S. bombers are sitting idling on the tarmac, fully prepped and waiting for the order to launch a second, even more destructive wave of strikes. With a collapsing military and no way out, Iran is attempting one final, highly dangerous gamble. Their only remaining play is to intentionally widen the conflict, hoping the resulting chaos will draw external allies into the fight. The logistical alliance between the U.S. and the UK has successfully engineered the systematic collapse of the Iranian military machine. Now, the world is waiting to see if the regime will finally break, or if their ultimate desperation will ignite a third world war. If you want to understand the exact flashpoints that could trigger that global conflict, check out our next video and make sure to subscribe to the Military Show so you never miss an update.